First contact attempt. The command center of the Zilarian Empire was always buzzing with activity, but today something felt different. The usual hum of machines and the chatter of alien officers suddenly stopped. Red lights flashed, and a loud alarm echoed through the metallic halls. Emergency broadcast. Unknown warship detected in Sector 7. The robotic voice announced, its tone cold and urgent. Commander Vectel, a tall, blue-skinned alien with sharp eyes, rushed to the central control panel. His heart pounded in his chest as he stared at the giant holographic screen. There, floating in the darkness of space, was a massive ship unlike anything they had seen in years. It was covered in thick, black armor, with glowing red lines running along its surface. The ship's shape was sharp and menacing, like a predator ready to strike. "Zoom in," Vectel ordered, his voice steady but tense. The image on the screen grew clearer. The alien officers gasped in shock as they saw the markings on the side of the ship. U.S. Vengeance. It was a human warship, a ghost from the past. This ship was thought to have been destroyed in the last war against the humans, but here it was, alive and moving through their space. "How is this possible?" whispered one of the officers, his voice filled with fear. Vectel narrowed his eyes. "It doesn't matter how. What matters is why it's here." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the stories of the humans. They were fierce fighters, known for their cunning and strength. The Zilarian Empire had barely survived the last war. Seeing a human warship in their territory was a nightmare they never expected to face again. "Send a message," Vectel commanded. "We need to know their intentions." An officer quickly tapped on the control panel, sending out a communication signal to the approaching ship. "Unknown vessel, you are in Zilarian territory. Identify yourself immediately, or we will consider this an act of war." The message was sent. The room waited in tense silence. Seconds felt like hours, but there was no reply. "Send it again," Vectel growled. The message was repeated, louder this time, but still, there was no response. The human ship continued to move closer, its weapons glowing faintly. The officers exchanged nervous glances. The tension in the room grew thicker with every passing moment. "Why aren't they responding?" whispered an officer. Vectel's mind raced with possibilities. Were the humans planning a surprise attack? Were they testing the Zilarian defenses? Or was there something even more sinister going on? "Prepare for defense," Vectel ordered. "Raise the shields and ready the weapons." The command center sprang into action. Officers rushed to their stations, their fingers flying over the controls. The holographic screen showed the Zilarian fleet moving into position, surrounding the human warship from all sides. But the human ship showed no signs of slowing down. It moved forward, steady and silent, like a predator stalking its prey. Suddenly, the human warship's weapons powered up. Bright red lights glowed along its sides, and the ship's cannons pointed directly at the Zilarian fleet. "They're going to fire," shouted an officer. "Hold your positions," Vectel barked. "Do not fire unless I give the order." The tension was unbearable. The Zilarian officers watched the screen with wide eyes, waiting for the first shot to be fired. But then, something unexpected happened. The human warship fired, but not at the Zilarian fleet. Instead, the lasers shot past them, hitting something hidden in the shadows of space. The holographic screen flickered, revealing a group of ships that had been cloaked from view. "Pirates." An officer gasped. They were hiding there all along. The Zilarian fleet watched in shock as the human warship destroyed the pirate ships with deadly precision. Explosions lit up the dark space, debris floating in all directions. Within minutes, the pirates were completely wiped out. The command center was silent again, but this time, it was a silence of confusion. Why had the humans saved them? What did they want? Just as Vectel was about to give the order to contact the human ship again, a new message appeared on the screen. It was from the U.S. Vengeance. The robotic voice read the message aloud. "We have eliminated the threat. Now, you owe us." The Zalarian officers looked at each other, their faces filled with fear and uncertainty. The humans had saved them, but their message was clear. This was not an act of kindness. It was a warning. Vectel clenched his fists, his mind racing with questions. What did the humans want? Why had they come back? And most importantly, could they be trusted? The first contact attempt had turned into something far more dangerous. And this was just the beginning. Let me know if you'd like any changes or if you're ready for the next part. Alien Panic. The message from the U.S. Vengeance echoed through the Zalarian Command Center like a thunderclap. "We have eliminated the threat. Now, you owe us." Commander Vectel stared at the words on the screen, his mind racing. The room, filled with top military strategists and officers, was eerily silent. The flickering holographic lights reflected off their tense faces, highlighting the fear in their eyes. "What do they mean? Owe us?" whispered Sub-Commander Jorlik, his voice barely audible over the low hum of the control panels. Vectel didn't respond immediately. His sharp eyes remained locked on the screen, analyzing every detail of the human warship that had just saved them. He knew humans were never altruistic. They always had a reason, and that reason was rarely good for anyone but themselves. "Open a secure channel to the High Council," Vectel ordered. "They need to know about this. Now." The communication officer, her hands shaking slightly, quickly tapped into the secure frequency. Within moments, the holographic image of the Zalarian High Council appeared, their towering figures cloaked in the traditional dark robes of authority. "Commander Vectel." The High Chancellor's deep, gravelly voice rumbled through the room. "Explain this situation." Vectel stood tall, his voice steady despite the growing unease. "A human warship, the U.S. Vengeance, has entered our territory. It destroyed a hidden pirate fleet that was preparing to attack our outposts. However, they have made it clear they expect something in return." The council members exchanged concerned glances. The High Chancellor's piercing eyes narrowed. "Humans do not offer help without a price. Find out what they want, but proceed with extreme caution." The hologram faded, leaving the command center in an even heavier silence. "What if they want something we can't give?" Jorlik muttered, voicing the fear that hung in the air like a shadow. Vectel turned sharply. "Then we prepare for war. But first, we need to understand their intentions." He gestured to the communication officer. "Send a message to the human ship. Ask them what they want." The message was sent, and once again, the room was filled with tense anticipation. Minutes passed like hours. Then the reply came. "Meet us at the edge of Sector 7. No weapons, no tricks, or face the consequences." The command center erupted into chaos. Officers shouted over one another, their voices filled with fear and anger. "It's a trap," one yelled. "We can't trust them. They'll slaughter us the moment we get close." Vectel raised his hand, and the room fell silent. "Enough. We will not panic like frightened children. We will meet them, but on our terms." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. "What do you propose, Commander?" Jorlik asked. Vectel's eyes glinted with determination. "We will send a small delegation, but our fleet will remain hidden, cloaked and ready to strike if necessary. If the humans try anything, we will be prepared." The plan was set in motion quickly. A small Zalarian shuttle, carrying Vectel and a few trusted officers, departed the command center, heading toward the designated meeting point. Meanwhile, the rest of the Zalarian fleet moved silently into position, their ships cloaked and weapons armed. As the shuttle approached the U.S. Vengeance, the tension inside was suffocating. The human warship loomed ahead, its dark hull reflecting the distant stars like a silent predator waiting for its prey. "We're being scanned," the pilot whispered, his hands tightening on the controls. "Let them scan," Vectel replied calmly, though his heart was pounding. "We're here to find answers." The shuttle docked with the human warship, and the Zilarian delegation stepped onto the cold, metallic floor of the U.S. Vengeance. The air was thick with tension. The walls were lined with strange symbols, and the dim lighting cast eerie shadows. Then, from the darkness, the humans appeared. They were taller than the Zilarian officers remembered, their eyes cold and calculating. At the front stood their leader, a woman with sharp features and a gaze that could cut through steel. "I am Captain Adrienne Cole," she said, her voice steady and commanding. "You know why we're here." Vectel met her gaze, refusing to show fear. "We know you destroyed the pirates. But what do you want from us?" Captain Cole's lips curled into a slight smile. "Protection." The Zilarian officers exchanged confused glances. "Protection? From what?" Vectel asked, his voice laced with suspicion. Captain Cole's smile faded. "Not what. Who? There's something coming from the edge of the galaxy, something that makes even humans afraid. And you're going to help us stop it." The words hung in the air, heavy with implications. Vectel realized that whatever was coming, it was bigger than any of them had imagined. The humans weren't here to conquer. They were here because they were desperate. But the question remained, could the Zilarian Empire trust their old enemies? And what kind of threat could scare the most dangerous species in the galaxy? The panic in the Zilarian command center was only just beginning, and the true danger was still out there, waiting. First contact attempt. The Zilarian shuttle drifted silently in the shadow of the U.S. Vengeance, its sleek, silver hull reflecting the distant starlight. Inside, Commander Vectel and his team sat in tense silence, their eyes fixed on the viewscreen as the human warship grew larger. The eerie stillness of space was only broken by the faint hum of the shuttle systems and the rapid, nervous breathing of the crew. "Approaching docking bay," the pilot announced quietly. Vectel gave a curt nod, though his mind was far from calm. The human's request for a meeting had left him unsettled. Protection? From what? Humans weren't known for asking for help. They were known for taking what they wanted. The shuttle shuddered as it connected with the docking port of the human ship. A sharp hiss echoed through the cabin as the airlocks aligned and sealed. The Zilarian officers exchanged wary glances, their hands resting lightly on their concealed weapons. Trusting humans was a dangerous gamble. The airlock door slid open with a slow mechanical groan, revealing a long, dimly lit corridor. The walls were lined with cold, metallic panels, and strange symbols glowed faintly along the edges. The oppressive silence seemed to press in from all sides. "Stay alert," Vectel whispered, leading his team into the heart of the U.S. Vengeance. They moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing against the metal floor. The corridors seemed to stretch endlessly, twisting and turning like a maze. Vectel's sharp eyes scanned every shadow, every flicker of movement. But the ship was eerily empty, as if the humans were watching them from the darkness. Finally, they reached a large chamber. The walls were covered in holographic displays, showing star maps and tactical readouts. At the center stood a group of humans, their faces cold and unreadable. At their head was Captain Adrienne Cole, her piercing eyes locking onto Vectel the moment he entered. "Welcome aboard," she said, her voice calm but carrying an edge of authority. "I see you accepted our invitation." Vectel didn't bother with pleasantries. "Why are we here, human? You destroyed the pirates. What do you want from us?" Captain Cole's lips curled into a faint smile. "Direct. I like that." She gestured to the holographic display behind her. It shifted, showing a section of the galaxy, and something else. A dark, swirling mass at the edge of known space, pulsing with a strange, ominous energy. "We call them the Void Reapers," she said quietly. "They're coming. And if we don't stop them, there won't be a galaxy left to fight over." The Zilarian officers exchanged uneasy glances. Vectel's eyes narrowed as he studied the display. The mass was unlike anything he had ever seen. It wasn't just an enemy fleet. It was something far worse. "Why should we believe you?" Vectel challenged. "Humans are known for lies and betrayal. Captain Cole's smile faded, because we've already faced them, and we barely survived. Our outposts on the outer rim were the first to fall. Entire colonies vanished without a trace. We fought back, but it wasn't enough. We need allies, even you. The room fell into a heavy silence. The idea of humans needing help was almost laughable, but there was no humor in Captain Cole's eyes. Whatever these Void Reapers were, they had managed to do what no other force had, put fear into the hearts of humanity. "What exactly do you want from us?" Vectal asked cautiously. "A temporary alliance," Cole replied. "Your ships, your soldiers, your knowledge of this sector. Together, we might stand a chance. Alone, we're doomed." Vectal considered her words. Trusting humans was dangerous, but ignoring this threat could be fatal. The Zilarian Empire had barely recovered from the last war. Another conflict could mean their end. "We will need proof of this threat," Vectal finally said. "We won't commit to anything based on your word alone." Captain Cole nodded. "Fair enough. We have recordings from our battles, data from our lost colonies. I'll share them with your council. But time is running out, Commander. The Void Reapers are moving fast." Vectal gave a curt nod. "We'll see your proof. Until then, this meeting is over." Without waiting for a response, he turned and led his team back through the corridors of the U.S. Vengeance. The return journey felt even longer, the weight of what they had learned pressing heavily on their minds. As the shuttle disconnected and drifted away from the human warship, Vectal stared out at the stars. If the humans were telling the truth, the galaxy was on the brink of a disaster far worse than any war. And if they were lying, well, he would be ready for that too. The first contact had been made, but the true battle was just beginning. The surprise attack. The Zilarian shuttle returned to the command center, its engines humming softly as it docked. Commander Vectal stepped off the ramp, his mind heavy with the humans' ominous warning. The halls of the Zilarian flagship buzzed with nervous energy, officers and soldiers whispering about the human warship that had ventured into their territory. Vectal wasted no time. He strode into the command chamber, his sharp gaze sweeping across the gathered officers. Sub-Commander Jorlek approached, his expression tense. "What did they say?" Jorlek asked. Vectal's voice was low and steady. "They claim a new enemy is coming, the Void Reapers. They want an alliance to stop them." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the room. The idea of humans asking for help seemed impossible, almost laughable. But there was no humor in Vectal's eyes. "Do you believe them?" Jorlek pressed. Vectal hesitated. "I don't know, but we'll find out soon enough. They're sending us proof. Until then, we prepare for both possibilities." As the officers dispersed to carry out their orders, a sudden alarm blared through the command center. Red lights flashed, and a holographic display flickered to life, showing a fleet of ships emerging from the edge of the sector. "Unknown vessels detected." An officer shouted. "They're heading straight for us." Vectal's heart pounded. "Identify them. Now." The screen zoomed in, revealing sleek, dark ships unlike anything the Zilarians had seen before. Their hulls seemed to shimmer and shift, as if made from living shadows. Strange, glowing symbols pulsed along their sides, casting an eerie light into the void. "They're not human," the officer whispered, his voice trembling. "They match no known designs." Vectal's blood ran cold. Could the humans have been telling the truth? "Raise shields. Prepare for battle," Vectal barked. The Zilarian fleet sprang into action, ships forming defensive formations around the command center. Weapons charged, and the tension in the air was palpable. But before the Zilarians could fire a single shot, the strange fleet attacked. Beams of dark energy lanced through space, tearing through Zilarian ships like paper. Explosions lit up the void, debris spiraling into the blackness. The enemy moved with terrifying speed, their ships darting through the battlefield with inhuman precision. "We're losing ships fast," an officer cried. "Our weapons aren't making a dent in their armor." Vektel's mind raced. This wasn't just an enemy attack. This was a massacre. The humans had warned them, but he hadn't listened. Now, they were paying the price. Just as hope seemed lost, a new signal flashed on the holographic display. The U.S. Vengeance had entered the battle. The human warship moved like a predator, its weapons blazing with deadly precision. It targeted the enemy ships, focusing its fire on their weak points. The Void Reaper's ships shuddered under the assault, their dark hulls cracking and breaking apart. "The humans are helping us," Jorlik exclaimed, disbelief in his voice. Vektel watched as the U.S. Vengeance tore through the enemy fleet, its massive cannons sending shockwaves through space. The tide of the battle began to turn. With the humans' help, the Zilarians managed to regroup and push back against the invaders. But the victory was short-lived. As the last of the Void Reaper ships exploded in a burst of dark energy, a new threat emerged from the shadows. A colossal ship, larger than anything they had ever seen, drifted into view. Its surface pulsed with dark light, and its presence sent a wave of fear through both the Zilarian and human fleets. "What is that?" Jorlik whispered, his voice filled with dread. Before anyone could answer, the massive ship fired a single devastating beam of energy. The U.S. Vengeance took the full force of the blast. The human warship shuddered, its hull cracking and splitting apart. "They're going down," an officer screamed. Vektel's heart clenched as he watched the U.S. Vengeance drift, crippled and burning. But just before it was completely destroyed, the human ship vanished in a burst of light, as if it had never been there. The Zilarian fleet was left in stunned silence, the enemy ship looming over them like a shadow of death. Vektel took a deep breath, his mind racing. The humans had saved them, but at what cost? And the true battle was only beginning. "Send a message to the High Council," he ordered. "We have no choice. We must ally with the humans, or we're all doomed." The room fell silent as his words sank in. The surprise attack had changed everything, and the galaxy would never be the same again. A dangerous alliance. The command center was silent, the weight of the recent battle heavy in the air. Commander Vektel stood at the central console, staring at the empty space where the U.S. Vengeance had vanished. The image of the massive Void Reaper ship lingered in his mind, a dark shadow that refused to fade. Sub-Commander Jorlik broke the silence. "The humans saved us, Commander. We can't deny that." Vektel's jaw tightened. "Yes, they did. But now, we're bound to them, and I don't trust the price they'll demand." Before they could say more, an incoming transmission alert blared through the command center. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing Captain Adrienne Cole. Her face was bruised, and her uniform scorched, but her eyes burned with determination. "Commander Vektel," she began, her voice steady despite the chaos she'd just escaped. "I assume you understand the situation now. The Void Reapers are real, and they won't stop until everything is gone." Vektel crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. "You want an alliance, but how can we trust you after everything humans have done?" Cole leaned forward, her gaze unflinching. "You can't, but you can't defeat them alone either. Trust isn't a luxury we have, Commander. Survival is." Vektel stared at her for a long moment, the weight of her words sinking in. The Zilarian Empire had barely survived the last war with humans, but this was something far worse. "What do you propose?" Vektel finally asked. Cole's lips curled into a thin smile. "A temporary alliance. Joint operations against the Void Reapers. We share resources, intelligence, and technology. Once the threat is neutralized, we go our separate ways." The room filled with murmurs of doubt and fear. Jorlik stepped forward, his voice low. "Commander, can we really risk this?" Vektel turned to his officers, his voice firm. "We don't have a choice. The Void Reapers will destroy us all if we don't stand together. But we will be cautious. We will watch the humans as closely as we watch our enemies." Turning back to the hologram, Vectel nodded. "We accept your terms, Captain. But if you betray us, we will end you." Cole's smile widened slightly. "Understood. I'll send coordinates for our first joint mission. Be ready." The transmission ended, and the command center buzzed with a mixture of relief and anxiety. The humans were dangerous, but the Void Reapers were worse. For now, they had to put their fears aside and fight together. Days later, the Zolarian fleet rendezvoused with the remnants of the human forces at the edge of Sector 9. The debris of destroyed ships floated silently in space, a grim reminder of the battles fought and lost. Aboard the Zolarian flagship, Vectel and his officers prepared for the first joint operation. The humans had provided intel on a Void Reaper stronghold hidden within a nearby nebula. The mission was simple: infiltrate, gather intelligence, and destroy any threats. Simple, but deadly. As the fleets moved into position, Vectel received a direct transmission from Captain Cole. "Commander, our scouts report heavy Void Reaper activity in the nebula. We'll need to coordinate closely to avoid ambushes." Vectel nodded, his eyes narrowing. "Agreed. But remember, Cole will be watching you. One wrong move, and we'll turn our weapons on you instead of the Reapers." Cole chuckled, the sound cold and humorless. "I'd expect nothing less. See you on the battlefield, Commander." The transmission ended, and Vectel turned to his officers. "Prepare the fleet. This alliance may be dangerous, but it's our only hope. Stay sharp and trust no one, not even our so-called allies." The Zylarian fleet surged forward, joining the human ships as they entered the dense, swirling clouds of the nebula. The dark energy of the Void Reapers pulsed through the mist, an ever-present threat lurking in the shadows. As they ventured deeper, strange readings flickered across the sensors. Ships disappeared from radar without a trace, their last transmissions filled with static and screams. The alliance was tested immediately, as both fleets had to rely on each other to survive the treacherous conditions. In the heart of the nebula, they found the Void Reaper stronghold, a massive structure pulsing with dark energy, surrounded by a fleet of shadowy ships. The sight sent chills down the spines of even the most hardened soldiers. "This is it," Vectel muttered. "The battle for our survival begins now." The joint fleets launched their assault, a coordinated strike of Zolarian precision and human ferocity. The battle was unlike anything either side had ever faced. The Void Reapers fought with terrifying speed and strength, their ships moving like shadows, striking without warning. But together, the humans and Zolarians pushed forward, their combined might slowly turning the tide. As the stronghold weakened, a new signal appeared on the sensors, a massive Void Reaper ship, larger than anything they had faced before, emerging from the shadows. Vectel's heart sank. Prepare for the final assault. This isn't over yet. The dangerous alliance had brought them this far, but the true test was still ahead. And in the darkness of the nebula, trust was as fragile as life itself. The bigger threat. The battle in the nebula raged on, a chaotic dance of light and shadow as the joint Zolarian and human fleets fought against the relentless Void Reapers. The stronghold's defenses crumbled under the combined assault. But just as hope flickered in the hearts of the Allied forces, the sensors picked up a new, horrifying signal. "Commander." Sub-Commander Jorlik's voice was tight with fear. "Something massive is emerging from the far side of the nebula. It's unlike anything we've seen before." Vectel's eyes snapped to the holographic display. The misty clouds of the nebula parted, revealing a colossal ship, if it could even be called a ship. It was a monstrous construct, pulsing with dark, organic energy. Its surface writhed like living flesh, and strange, glowing runes covered its hull, radiating an aura of pure malevolence. The Void Reaper's previous ships had been deadly, but this was something else entirely. It was as if the void itself had taken form, a harbinger of annihilation. "By the stars," Jorlik whispered. "What is that?" Before Vectel could respond, a transmission came through, not from the humans, but from the monstrous ship itself. It wasn't words, but a wave of psychic energy that slammed into the minds of every living being in the fleet. Visions of destruction, death, and endless void flooded their thoughts. Some officers screamed, clutching their heads, while others collapsed to the floor, their minds shattered by the overwhelming force. Vectel gritted his teeth, forcing the visions from his mind. He turned to his crew, his voice a lifeline in the chaos. "Hold your ground. Focus on your training. We will survive this." The crew struggled to regain their composure, but the fear lingered, a heavy weight pressing down on them. The massive Void Reaper ship began to move, its weapons charging with dark energy. One by one, beams of destructive power lanced out, tearing through the Allied fleet with terrifying ease. "We're being slaughtered," Jorlek shouted. "Our weapons can't penetrate its armor." Just when all seemed lost, a new signal appeared on the sensors. The U.S. Vengeance, thought destroyed in the previous battle, reappeared in a flash of light, its hull patched and reinforced with unfamiliar, glowing technology. It moved with a speed and precision that defied logic, as if it had been reborn from the very void it now faced. Captain Adrian Cole's voice crackled through the comms, filled with a fierce determination. "We found their weakness. Follow our lead, and we might just survive this." Vectel's eyes narrowed. "You'd better be right, human." The U.S. Vengeance led the charge, targeting specific points on the monstrous ship's surface. Where their weapons struck, the dark energy flickered and weakened. Vectel quickly relayed the targeting data to the Xylarian fleet. "Focus all fire on these coordinates. Coordinate with the humans. This is our only chance." The Allied fleets moved in unison, their weapons striking the weak points with precision. Slowly, the massive Void Reaper ship began to falter, its dark energy sputtering as critical systems were destroyed. But the Void Reapers weren't done yet. With a final, desperate act, the monstrous ship released a pulse of dark energy, sending shockwaves through the nebula. The blast disabled ships, fried systems, and left the Allied fleets vulnerable. The U.S. Vengeance was hit hard, its systems flickering. But instead of retreating, it pushed forward, charging directly at the heart of the Void Reaper ship. "What are they doing?" Jorlek gasped. Vectel's heart sank as he realized the humans' plan. "They're going to sacrifice themselves to destroy it." The U.S. Vengeance rammed into the monstrous ship, a brilliant explosion lighting up the nebula. The shockwave rippled through space, tearing apart the Void Reaper vessel and scattering its remains into the void. The battlefield fell silent. The remaining Void Reaper ships, now leaderless, fled into the shadows of space. The Xylarian fleet was battered and broken, but they had survived. For now. Vectel stared at the empty space where the U.S. Vengeance had been. The humans had sacrificed everything to stop the Void Reapers, but a nagging thought lingered in his mind. Did they truly destroy it, or just delay the inevitable? The bigger threat had been revealed, but Vectel knew this was only the beginning. The void was vast, and its hunger was endless. "Send a message to the High Council," he ordered, his voice heavy with resolve. "We need to prepare. The real war is still ahead." As the Xylarian fleet limped away from the nebula, Vectel couldn't shake the feeling that the void was watching, waiting for its next chance to strike. The final battle. Weeks passed since the destruction of the colossal Void Reaper ship, but the scars it left on the Xylarian fleet and their fragile alliance with the humans ran deep. The surviving fleets limped back to their respective territories, haunted by the eerie silence that followed the battle. Yet in that silence, there was no peace, only the looming threat of what was still to come. Commander Vectel stood on the bridge of the Xylarian flagship, staring out at the void. The U.S. Vengeance was gone, but its sacrifice had bought them time. Time to regroup, to prepare. But the question that gnawed at him was simple. Was it enough? An urgent alert snapped him from his thoughts. The communications officer's voice trembled. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission." "It's from the humans." Vectel's eyes narrowed. Impossible. The U.S. Vengeance was destroyed. But the signal was clear. The officer opened the channel, and the holographic display flickered to life. There, standing amidst a dimly lit command room, was Captain Adrienne Cole. Her face was pale, her uniform torn, but her eyes burned with the same fire Vectal had seen in their last battle. "Commander Vectal," she began, her voice steady despite her appearance. "The Void Reapers, they're not done. We destroyed one of their vessels, but we only scratched the surface. They're regrouping, adapting. We found something worse." Vectal's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" Cole's image flickered, distorted by interference. "They're not just ships, Commander. They're part of something bigger, a living entity. The ships we fought are like cells in a body, and we've only seen the smallest part of it. The core, it's waking up. If we don't stop it, it will consume everything." The transmission cut off suddenly, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Vectal clenched his fists. The humans had survived, but barely. And the threat they described sounded worse than anything he could have imagined. Moments later, another alarm blared. This time, it wasn't a message, it was an invasion. "Commander," Jorlek shouted, "Void Reaper ships are emerging across multiple sectors. They're everywhere." Vectal's mind raced. This wasn't just an attack. It was the beginning of the end. "Send a message to the High Council and the human fleet," Vectal ordered. "Tell them to mobilize. This is it, the final battle." The Allied fleets gathered at the edge of the Zilarian Empire, where the void began to pulse with unnatural energy. The humans, battered but unbroken, arrived alongside the Zilarians, their ships marked by scars of countless battles. But even together, their numbers seemed small compared to the dark swarm of Void Reaper vessels that stretched across the horizon. As the fleets prepared for battle, Vectal and Captain Cole met face to face for the first time since their last transmission. They stood aboard the Zilarian flagship, the weight of their shared mission heavy in the air. "We're outnumbered," Jorlek whispered. "We can't win this." Cole's eyes hardened. "Then we make sure we don't die for nothing." The final strategy was simple. Strike at the heart of the Void Reapers. If they could destroy the core, the source of the Void Reapers' power, they might stand a chance. But it was a suicide mission. As the fleets surged forward, the void itself seemed to resist them. Space twisted and warped, and the Void Reapers struck with terrifying speed. Ships were torn apart, their crews lost to the darkness. But the Allied forces pressed on, driven by desperation and the slim hope of survival. In the heart of the void, they saw it, the core, a massive, pulsating sphere of dark energy, surrounded by tendrils of living void. It radiated pure destruction, and even the bravest soldiers felt fear claw at their hearts. "Focus all fire on the core," Vectal roared. The fleets unleashed everything they had, their combined firepower lighting up the darkness. The core shuddered, but it wasn't enough. The void fought back, consuming ships with tendrils of shadow, dragging them into nothingness. Just as hope began to fade, Captain Cole's voice cut through the chaos. "We have one chance. I'm taking the U.S. Vengeance I into the core. Cover us." Vectal's heart sank. "You'll never make it." Cole smiled, a fierce, defiant grin. "Maybe not, but we'll buy you enough time." The U.S. Vengeance I surged forward, its engines blazing. The human ship pierced the tendrils of void, heading straight for the core. The Allied fleets followed, covering their advance with everything they had. As the Vengeance II reached the core, a blinding explosion erupted, sending shockwaves through space. The tendrils writhed and shrieked, and the Void Reaper ships faltered. The core began to collapse, pulling the void into itself. The Allied fleets retreated as the void imploded, the remnants of the Void Reapers vanishing into nothingness. The silence that followed was deafening. Vectel stared at the empty space where the core had been, his heart heavy with loss, but also with hope. They had survived. The galaxy was safe. For now. But as he turned to his officers, a thought lingered in his mind. The void is gone, he whispered, but for how long? The final battle was over, but the scars it left behind would never fade. And somewhere, in the deepest corners of space, the void watched, waiting for its next chance to rise.